Hey y'all, welcome back to Bedtime Noir. Tonight I'm going to share with you a snippet from Murder Mayhem in Tucson by Patrick Whitehurst. Patrick writes lots of nonfiction, but he also writes lots of fiction, and he has some books called the Barker Mysteries, and most of those are set in Monterey, California. He has a new one out called Monterey Lies, and so I'm really looking forward to taking a look at that. But tonight I'm just going to share with you a little bit from the chapter in Murder and Mayhem in Tucson called The Pied Piper of Tucson, and it's about serial murderer Charles Schmid. There are lots of stories or pieces in this book about specific people and criminals associated with Tucson history, and there's lots of stuff, just historical events like the effects of the flu epidemic of 1918, which burned through the country and claimed a lot of lives. And I've read a lot about how it affected different industries, and in Hollywood it had a big effect as well in the silent era. I've done a lot of research on Erich von Stroheim, and I remember reading about that. So there are all kinds of historical references, and then all kinds of pieces in this book and chapters about different people like John Dillinger, who you've heard of, I'm sure. If you haven't, you can find out about it here. But this one about Charles Schmid had a special fascination for me because I'm really interested in that story by Joyce Carol Oates called Where Are You Going, Where Have You Been? I've taught that in my classes a lot, and we've discussed some of the literary elements of it. And there's a character very much like Charles Schmid. Supposedly he's Arnold Friend in the story is based on the Pied Piper of Tucson, Charles Schmid. And the end of the story is pretty open-ended, but it leaves you with a very ominous feeling. And there are a lot of interesting details about Arnold Friend, the character in the story, which are based on the actual person, Charles Schmid. And so you can learn a lot about that here. Just kind of the odd way he would kind of present himself to women to kind of ingratiate himself, but he had just really bad intention. And so I'm just going to share with you a little snippet from the chapter The Pied Piper of Tucson from Murder and Mayhem in Tucson. Okay, so here goes. He suffered poor grades throughout school. It's often said that he compensated for his short stature by stuffing whatever he could find into his boots, often cowboy boots, to make himself appear taller. He would dye his hair black and, as a finishing touch, apply an odd mixture of makeup to his face along with a smear of white lipstick to make his mouth look pale. On his skin, he'd apply tan-colored pancake makeup and a faux beauty mark on his cheek he made from axle grease and a small bit of putty. Following high school, it's believed that Schmid lived off his parents' income. He never made an effort to find employment on his own. Despite all of this, Schmid was something of a ladies' man, a fact he often boasted about in an odd way. I can manifest my neurotical emotions, emancipated epicureal instinct, and elaborate on my heterosexual tendencies, he would say, according to some news reports. When the spring of 1964 rolled around, Schmid dated a teen named Mary French, described by some as a frumpy 17-year-old. By late May, he had confided in her, as well as his comrade, John Saunders, that he wanted to kill someone, a girl in particular. It was French, according to all accounts, who lured a young 15-year-old from her home not long after their deadly discussion. Aline Rowe had been promised a party, and when her mother left for the evening to her job as a night nurse, she snuck out to meet French. There would be no party. Instead, Schmid, French, and Saunders took the girl to the desert outskirts of Tucson. She was raped by the two men, who later bludgeoned her with a stone. While they buried her, French buried the hair curlers the girl had been wearing at the time, according to historical accounts. During a subsequent police investigation into the young teen's disappearance, both French and Schmid were questioned by the authorities and admitted that they planned to take her to a party, but said she was nowhere to be found when they arrived to pick her up. With both stating the same thing, the police moved their investigation elsewhere. A bulletin dispatched by Tucson police at the time described Rowe as wearing a one-piece black bathing suit, a blouse covered in yellow flowers, and orange flip-flops. And so that's just a little snippet from that chapter of Murder and Mayhem in Tucson. As far as the Joyce Carol Oates short story, there is a novel. I mean, there's a movie based on that called Smooth Talk, starring Laura Dern. And Treat Williams plays the Arnold Friend character based on Charles Schmid. And Treat Williams, who passed away recently, does a really great job portraying Arnold Friend. He's more appealing than the character in the story, but some of the details, like he would stuff something down into his boots to make him look taller, and some of the makeup that he wore, a lot of those appear in the story, and you can interpret them all kinds of different ways. But I just really thought this was interesting, and I really recommend it. If you're a fan of true crime, you will enjoy Murder and Mayhem in Tucson. And if you're just interested in history about American cities, there's a lot here that you might find quite fascinating. And Patrick also writes some really great flash fiction. He has a series called Sam the Thug that I know some of those have appeared in Punk Noir magazine and other places as well. And he has stories in several anthologies, and so I hope you'll check out his work. And I will see you next time on Bedtime Noir, and take care. See you then. Bye-bye.